The new Rise of the Empire TB is actually worth your time even if you are in one of the smaller guilds. Let me explain why. Despite the high barrier to entry for most mid to late game players, the majority of the territory points and therefore the rewards actually come from filling out the operations and simply deploying your GP. Because the operations reward so much more territory points than standard combat missions, our guild decided to focus on filling out these operations, and that led us to actually being able to achieve a higher star rating than we would have otherwise been able to. And thinking about it, there is actually a small silver lining to this new TB. Until you get to the point where you're able to fill out your operations, deploy, and have enough relic levels on your teams to actually compete in the combat missions, TB becomes a very quick and easy process for most people. I'm sure you've all been there before. Start of a new TB and you are deploying your platoon units. You're waiting for all those platoons to be filled. Then you start doing your dozen or so combat missions and special missions. You go through and you remod your units. You have to go into the battles and hope that you don't get a game crash and lose a bunch of your progress and contribution towards the guild. You're trying to hit those 70 plus waves in Lightside GOTB. That is now all gone. You don't have to worry so much about it. All you really have to do now is make sure that you get your operations filled. Yes, the barrier to entry is high, it is cumbersome, but the amount of time that we save, because the combat missions themselves give a fraction of the benefit, really can't be understated. And that leads on to the next real benefit, and that's the reward system. Yes, it's true, the rewards are not as good as people would have hoped for, even if you are earning up to 36 stars, as we have seen the biggest guilds in the game does. Yes, they're only getting 1 Girder keypad and 2 additional impulse detectors, which in the grand scheme of things, and given the level investment required to hit that, is not a very big return. However, we need to compare this against the alternative. Compare those rewards to what you would normally be getting in Darkside GOTB. Compare those benefits to what you get in Lightside GOTB. Sure, the difference is lower for the Lightside GOTB, but it's still an increase. The benefit is actually tangible. It's not great, and it's not terrible, but it's still better. It's giving us some rewards that help us relic additional characters. It's rewarding us with get 3 currency so that we can actually buy more impulse detectors, we can buy Zimbriddles, we can buy Girder keypads, or we could choose to spend it on Chirotech. Slowly, very gradually increasing our rewards to help us relic our rosters that little bit quicker. My advice would definitely be, try and attempt this new TB, try and push your star counts higher, but I certainly wouldn't say advance your roster in particular directly for this. This is not a one-man race. When we saw the announcements for what's going to be required in the operations for this new TB, my heart sank. I'm sure you're with me on this. I looked at there and I was thinking, who wants to R7 their Tebow? Who wants an R9 Ugnaught? Who wants an R9 Rose Tico? Who wants an R9 Garsa? But really, ultimately, this is not a one-man army. You are not here to try and get all these operations platoons done yourself. What our guild decided to do as a result of this is actually go ahead and query with the entire guild. Who wants to be doing this? Who wants to relic 7 their Tebow? Who wants this particular relic requirement? If everybody's on the same page and everybody's working to a communal goal, it makes the process that much easier. And I don't have to R7 my Teemo. Garl Saxon, on the other hand. This is a team effort. You have to go in with your entire guild all on the same page. You need to discuss with your guild officers, who is going to be doing what? Are you going to be part of that team player that is going to help fill out those operations? Does it actually get you to the next star? If it does, then great. Every guild should be trying to aim towards these certain tiers. Try and hit 29 stars. At 29 stars, you will start getting impulse detectors, which is a key bottleneck for Relic 8. Don't get me wrong, I understand that 29 stars is out of reach for a lot of guilds, but you will get there eventually. And even if you're not hitting that 29 star threshold, the rewards are still better than other alternatives. Yes, I'm still very much in the camp of I wish we could properly engage with this content and play the missions. But ultimately, better rewards is better. And for the first time in TBs, we can actually use some of those mixed teams that we've wanted to use for so long. We can actually go in and use things like a proper bounty hunter team. In the past, this wasn't possible because of the likes of Grief and Mando, whilst being pivotal units for the bounty hunter faction, were light side and the rest were all dark side, so we couldn't actually use them in any given TB. Now we can. We can use a Star Killer team, which is actually a really fun team to use if you haven't tried them out already. It's a very powerful team, it's very fun, but because of the mixed status of their alignments, they just weren't feasible inside previous TBs. So not only can we use scoundrels and we can go ahead and we can use oddball teams like Starkiller, we can also start to mix and match things with GLs. You can now start throwing in Wat Tambor with the likes of GL Ray, for example. That's just one example, but you can use Armorer with C. I know it's only in the middle row, but it gives us a few options, which I think was in dire need of happening. Just spice things up a little bit. It wasn't like a complete overhaul of what we've all expected to see. It wasn't anything super brand new, but it was just gradual steps to a new form of TB, and I'm okay with that. Let's also take a little quick moment here to talk about the fleet missions. Now, there's a couple of things about these new fleet combat missions that they've introduced that I think bears talking about. First and foremost, great thing, you don't need relic requirements. No, not for the fleets, at least not a hard lock. Your pilots don't have to be relic levels in order to enter these combat missions. They'll most likely need to have some relic investments to actually finish a bunch of these missions, but because I'm assuming because of the likes of pilotless ships and the way the game is coded, CG probably couldn't introduce or didn't have a method of introducing relic requirements for the fleet combat missions. So provided you have your ships at 7-star, you are able to enter into the fleet combat missions. But not only that, take a look at the rewards for completing a fleet combat mission. The territory points that we gain from beating fleet combat missions is usually over twice as much as what you'd get from a standard ground combat mission. So if a guild wants to try and focus on making sure that they can fill the platoons, but then also complete the fleet combat missions, they'll find themselves in good stead and earning a lot more stars than you actually think would be possible. This, I feel, is a positive change. Now, as for the difficulty of these particular combat missions, I find if you do have the Profundity, just that latest legendary capital ship, the Profundity, if you do have it, the combat missions in which you can use it, in either the mixed or in the light side, pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward. I haven't had any difficulties really completing those missions. However, I believe it was the Phase 2 Dark Side mission where you're facing off against the Geos. Oh my days. Those Geonosians tore through me like I was made of paper. I lasted about 3 seconds. No joke. But all joking aside, guys, I do find that there are some positives to pull out of this. The fleets, they've done a pretty good job of it. Some of the new character models that they've introduced as well are actually looking pretty cool. Some of the areas that we go to look really cool. I'm a particular fan of the new Purge Trooper model. I think it looks sick, even if the kits are not all that inspired or anything particularly new. And oh my god, do they hurt. I do like the actual character models. I think they're good. The Pike Syndicate is another example of stuff that they've introduced. It's all really cool stuff. But I don't want to come off as if I'm trying to praise CG here too much. There's a lot that they've done in this TB that I have liked, but equally, there's still stuff that I don't quite agree with. First and foremost, I don't really like the high level relic entry gate. They've said it's because they want it to be a long-term, multi-year goal, stretch goal for whatever reason. The thing is that's at odds with other areas of the game that they've talked about. They've talked about the fact that they can look to expand this TB, introduce new planets, presumably introducing new special mission characters like Reaver into new planet zones. So if they can add additional areas and presumably additional stars and additional modifiers and additional difficulty and artificially increase the length and enjoyment of this TB mode over time, then why is everything Relic 9? In phases 5 and 6? Is it really because you're trying to extend the lifetime? We still can't beat Lightside GOTB at max stars. So why has this one been pushed even further out and put as content we still can't actually play? So I think that's a little bit at odds, and I think they're not being entirely transparent with their reasons for us. I think it might be because they want money. They did attempt to address this inside their Q&A for TB. And they were saying that, yes, a lot of people have been saying that the high relic entry is a bit of a stumbling block. And their response essentially comes around to, they wanted to make something long-term. They said that players feel as if the wind has been taken out of their sails once they've reached endgame and there's nothing more for them to realistically achieve. But that still is against odds with what we see in Lightside GOTB. The reason people are feeling a little bit disappointed, a little bit unmotivated with this new TB is because no matter how much investment they put in, it's impossible to hit that last achievement. We cannot get that last star. Not even if you relic 9 everything, 6A mods everything, and get every single Omicron and every single Zeta on every single character, you still don't have the GP to hit that last star. So what is the player base supposed to think? We just think, why bother? They're telling us now that we need to be focusing on territory war so that we can start earning more Relic 9 mats to expand our rosters. But again, that's at odds, because droid brains are not the bottleneck for the majority of the player base. Only those players with 30 plus Relic 9 characters are really hurting for droid brains, or very young whales who haven't had the time to build up a slew of droid brains. The real issue here is even getting to that Relic 7, Relic 8 point, where you don't even need droid brains. So yeah, I don't agree with that, and nobody is going to convince me, no matter what, that Relic 9 gating was the solution to creating long-term content. I don't think it is, personally. One of the other things that I don't quite agree with is I guess it's more around the restrictions again. I know that they want to push the latest and greatest, right? We knew going into it that Inquisitorius is going to be an important part of this TB. We knew that Jabba the Hutt, for one reason or another, was going to be an important part of this TB. We knew that Dr. Aphra, for one reason or another, was playing a pivotal role in this new TB. Now, call me a cynic, but is that really because these are just the very latest character types that have come to the game? Is it the latest, legendary event? Is it the latest galactic legend? And is it CG's favorite faction, the Inquisitorius? Do they really just want people to heavily invest in the brand new stuff for an arbitrary reason, because it's brand new and it's the most expensive thing for us to gear up? It's taking up like a third of the battles through every phase. Specific missions for Reva, specific missions for Inquisitorius, specific missions for Jabba, specific missions for Dr. Aphra. Did it have to happen? Not really. Was it in the player's interests? Absolutely not. Did it make thematic sense? Kind of. For the Inquisitorius, I guess. But for Jabba? For Aphra? I don't know. I don't mind. I don't have a problem with the principle of CG wanting to make money and incentivizing people to spend money on the latest stuff. I don't. I really don't. But sometimes it feels like you're getting your head smashed out with a big sign saying, "Buy me! Buy me!" And I don't really take kindly to that. But hey, I'm not against them trying to make money. Ultimately, though, if your guild is qualifying for this new TB, you're breaching that 200 million GP bracket to entry, I do think that you should at least attempt it, perhaps instead of a dark side mission, just to see where you land. Yes, granted, there are costs to doing this TB. You won't be getting your watch shards, you won't be getting your cam shards, unless you happen to allocate your Get 3 currency to earning whatever shards that you need. I do think the rewards are worth the effort on this one. And speaking of getting ready for this TB, how about you guys check out this video that I did recently doing your galactic challenges for you? Go watch that and let me know how you get on.